Hello, my name is Lance, also known as Running Rad. In advance, I apologize for Discord notifications. We just learned Dragon Cheers banned and I don't know how to turn them off. I'm here to tell you guys about my experience at the 2023 San Antonio Pokemon VGC Regionals, which was my first regional tournament. So this isn't going to be some grand story of how I went 8-1 day one and managed to almost top cut day two. No, I went 5-4, but it's a fun story of how I went 5-4, and it's a fun story of somebody who's competing in their first regional, which is I think I mean I always love to see. It's always fun to see new people enter a scene, and I get to be that new person. So, and as I mentioned, given being new, my history is that I have very little history. Up to this point, I've only been competing in in-person tournaments for about 2 months, and I've competed in the Collegiate VGC League twice, both of which was both both seasons of which were also in 2023. So pretty much this is my first true year of playing VGC. I've attempted to get into it a few times before, namely during Gen 8. There was a couple times, I think during when both I think when both restricted format, the first one truly happened, and then also some at some point at the beginning of the game. But for the most part, I'm officially in. I'm officially going for it now, and I've been competing in person, as I mentioned, in-person events for the last 2 months in Colorado. So I've gotten familiar with the Colorado scene. Uh, with that, I'm going to separate this video into pretty much three parts, which is my team, my tournament experience as a competitor, and how all the battles went, so watch all my rounds, and my experience and my general experience there, and both as the San Antonio regional, as a just a person being there, and also a person who uh, maybe just a little bit about San Antonio because it's a great city. So a little bit more context. I also live in Austin, so I did not spend the exact same amount of time at San Antonio as everybody did. I showed up. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. Saturday of, drove down, played my 9 rounds, went to the hotel, enjoyed the Riverwalk. Next morning, woke up, went home because we did not want to do the drive back on the same day. Uh, so yeah, but that's I think a good starting point. Let's get to my team. In advance, I'm a bit of a rambler. So my team is a pretty overall basic team. It's not basic in the sense that it's like bad, but basic in the sense that for the most part, this is a pretty standard balanced team. The Of course, you see the Golden Go, Urshifu, Tornadus, Rillaboom, Arcanine, Hisui. That was the top five at the tournament. So if I can pull it up here, I think I'm using. Did this one relog? Oh, this one did as well, didn't it? It's not a big deal. Spoiler. As you can see, this isn't exactly an uncommon core. I'm using a bunch of the most common team compositions at the tournament, and most notably the most common five Pokemon composition, which is these guys, which is which appeared on 7.5% of all teams. So we're not exactly talking about a core that is rare. Of course, this isn't a core that. Well, this is a core that cracked. It's a core that came. It didn't crack top cut, but wait, I'm trying to make sure. I'm trying to make sure my eyes are right because it's that can be a problem sometimes. It isn't a core that hardcore top the cut because Hearthflame Ogerpon began to take over near the end of the meta once again, and then also Landorus Incarnate. So which are Pokemon I wasn't given how my team building went. It wasn't Pokemon I had on my team builder at first. This was a team that I started making at the beginning of early November. Originally, this was the first look of the team. I wanted to really do redirect Golden Go. The issue is that I wanted to redirect Golden Go with Clefairy because I wanted to do Heal Pulse and Helping Hand support. Believe it or not, there is an issue with that set, and that's the fact that Golden Go, has good as gold as its nature. So anything Clefairy does is going to not really matter because Clefairy can redirect stuff away and then protect. Ultimately, I ended up still running a tournament with this core, but with Clefairy instead of Amoonguss, and just replaced Heal Pulse with Nightshade, and still ran it with Helping Hand to give it some offensive output, which is another mistake I mostly made with this Clefairy, alongside Terra Steel, which I mostly shouldn't have done. So I'm kind of glad it's I actually switched to Terra Water for the in-person tournament. I brought it to mid the Premier Challenge in mid-November. So I'm gonna go over each team real quick. Golden Go is a stand. This is a standard for the most part. Terra Dragon with leftovers, nasty plot setup. Golden Go. Just for reference, all my EVs are off of Munch stats. I'm not an EV guy. If it works, it works, and for me, it worked. So obviously, Golden Go is a really good Pokemon, especially later into the meta. It's one of the Pokemon I think was beginning to catch on more early November. I was beginning to hear whispers of it, and it's like I want to use that. I think that's going to be good, which ultimately I feel like was a good call because where is it? Damn, it's called way down again. Because as you can, yeah, it's like that's a lot of usage rates, and it was. I mean, hey, it's one of the most common duos with Urshifu Rapid Strike as well. That's where these two come in. At the time when I made this, I was really scared of my Heatran matchup, so I decided, okay, let's add Urshifu, let's add Tornadus. Didn't want to do choice scarf. I'm not the biggest fan of choice items in the world. We'll see this when we get to Arcanine as well. So I ended up doing Mystic Water, but still did Ice Spinner, more so for extra coverage instead of Protect or Detect. Is it something I regret? I'm not really sure because I feel like having Protect at some points would be nice because this just prevents me from getting double targeted. Because for the most part, ironically, I feel like Urshifu is one of the least scared Pokemon, least scary Pokemon to protect into possible when you see an Urshifu on the other side of the field, just in a funny circumstance. For the most part, though, these two are so broken. It's like what? There's really no reason we should have had Urshifu in the meta before we got to deal with like especially even back in Reg D, which is before I started playing, so like Worlds and all that. There's no reason this Pokemon should have been available until now. Thankfully, it seems to be going down with all the Raging Bolt and stuff, but it's no surprise that these two Pokemon dominated the meta. Likewise, this is a pretty standard Tornadus Terraghost. No taunt. I did Rain Dance, Tailwind, Protect, Bleak Wind with Mental Herb. I know Rocky Helmet caught on. I have Rocky Helmet on Amoonguss, and I'm pretty happy I have Rocky Helmet on Amoonguss for the most part. Next up is Rillaboom. This is an incorrect move. I don't know why this is Woodhammer. This is an incorrect move. This should be High Horsepower, not Woodhammer. Assault AV, Rillaboom. Honestly, I think one of the most consistent Pokemon on the team. Because obviously Urshifu is going to have its highs, but I feel like if you aren't smart with it, which I'm still a newer player, I'm going to make mistakes with it. You can have some pretty noticeable lows with Urshifu because it just is frail. Rillaboom is just, I think, the most consistent Pokemon. It's if my opponent is putting resources into one hit KO Rillaboom, it might take away like because I don't feel like Rillaboom was always like going to be the biggest threat on the field, but it's never going to be the smallest threat on the field. And I feel like at some point, some people begin to hyper focus like it's the biggest threat, and which can be a really good outcome for facing off, for having it out. I have a couple cases where I had some opponents fish for one hit KO. I had a case where there was a one hit KO fished for it. Ultimately, I was able to win that battle regardless. Arcanine Hisui, I did a Citrus Berry slightly bulkier set instead of Banded. I'm not, as I mentioned, not a big fan of choice items, and I really liked what Willow was brought to the team. This was a Pokemon that was more so good in Colorado meta versus regional meta, which sounds weird, but I think for the most part, especially just with all the, is there any way I could like reduce this? I'm not gonna be going super crazy with. We're gonna have to scroll through 500 teams. It'll be okay. For the most part, really nice, especially given how physically oriented the meta was. I feel like when I say that out loud, I just scroll through and pass a bunch of physical attackers. But having Will-O-Wisp was nice, especially in Colorado where there's more. I feel like it was just a good move for specifically those tournaments. Maybe in regional, E-Speed's a bit better. I like the priority, but for the most part, I'm happy. And finally, Amoonguss, which is it has Clear Smog instead of Protect, which is another Colorado thing. Because specifically, Protect is having Clear Smog is nice because people in Colorado like Dondozo Tatsugiri. There's no better way to boil it down. If you watched, yeah, yeah, I've faced off against Dozo Giri only twice actually, but that's for the most part the fact that I'm still not. I'm still figuring out stuff. In future, most likely replace this with Protect before the tournament, but at that point, it's like I had some good utility with Clear Smog outside of it. I could use in Colorado tournaments. I was good with running Clear Smog, and for the most part, other than that, standard Amoonguss, pretty standard tears. One thing I forgot to mention with Arcanine is that I'm a big fan of Terra Grass on Hisuian Arcanine, simply because it's like, okay, quad weak to water, quad weak to ground. You terrestrialize, you're no longer quad weak. Left the issue where, as you can see, we get 3 grass types all next to each other, but I was usually trying to be aware and not put myself into that situation often. I have done that a couple times because, well, it's nice to bring Terragrass Arcanine into a Dozo matchup. You're also sticking it next to Amoonguss and Rillaboom, and if they have a fire type in the back, which happened once, if you don't prepare yourself correctly, it's not going to end pretty. So for the most part, that was my team. High horsepower was mostly for Iron Hands, which I ran into technically once. I'll get into that later, but yeah. So now it's time to go more so into the tournament experience. So these were all my rounds. I'm using a lab mouse because I just like the sites, like what got me into VGC. Uh, Pretty much main thing, Ogerpon Heartflame catching on was something that really didn't affect my run. I never ran into it. I ran into Ogerpon once and it was a Wellspring. Uh, the other thing was this more so being Landorus Incarnate's in coming out party, for lack of a better term. I feel like this was like the first tournament where Landorus Incarnate really caught on as a Pokemon, and people began to bring it for the most part as a meta call. And this is of course still a bit weird because there's still Landorus Therian was still super popular at the tournament. Landorus Therian was the more used, but because this was pre-Reg F, where now Incarnate has caught on to an immense amount. So for the most part, yeah, it's lots of my team was yeah, that was something I noticed. My team was not into Landorus. You'll notice 2 of my losses are to also balanced teams, so the pretty much this exact, maybe not moveset wise, EV wise, but the same team, like same balanced team. So instead of Amoonguss, they have Landorus Eye. So for the most part, these were 2-1 losses. It's like, okay, first regional, I'm not gonna be perfect. Uh, this was the first round I'm really not happy with my performance in. There's only 2, and the second one's obviously gonna be this one because I pretty much felt like I gave up partway through, and this one is the one I'm honestly kind of embarrassed about as well because I wasn't like not a graceful competitor after this loss. I was a bit salty. I said stuff like, "Oh, I'm not a big fan of Size Spam. I don't." It's like Size Spam comment, a little cool comment. It's like I shouldn't have done that. That's very disrespectful of me. I was able to talk to Ian afterwards though. We hashed it out. We talked a bit. It's like he built the team like the night before because of finals, which the whole reason I built my team in November was because of finals. So that was finals are a scary thing in college. Uh, Round 4 was the first. Ultimately, like I should have played better this round. I should have done better to avoid Sun this round. I just didn't play this that well. Next up was round 4. This was the first one of the tournament. At this point, already eliminated from Top Cut, but due to the hole kicker, top 256 got points. But I just wanted to play. It was first regional. I think just going out and playing and getting 9 rounds of experience in is much better than not. So after this, it's a Hisuian Gudra team. So body press. One thing I've noticed is that people who run body press strats love bringing their body press Pokemon. Like I'm not saying they just love bringing it. So usually my tactic is bringing Golden Go in the back because body pressers will generally bring body press and some steel and some coverage that doesn't work into steel, which means Golden Go pretty much bodies the strategy essentially. This one was a bit scarier because instead of body pressing what Hisuian Guja usually runs and is the one I'm used to facing in person, which is Heavy Slam, it actually was knockoff. So I had to play slightly careful because getting rid of leftovers is not awesome. But for the most part, I managed to play my game plan well. I think it was Gudra, Gapdos, Lilligant, Torkoal both games. I, I don't remember if there was a Flutter Mane or not. I think there was a Flutter Mane game 1 because game 2 was very much built around I remember being around like playing around the local turn one, and Gapdos and Gudra were there. Maybe Gudra was only brought one game. It's been 2.5 weeks. It's I'm not gonna remember everything perfectly. Ultimately played that set really well because, as I mentioned, I just match up really well in the Gudra. This was the first one where I feel like I actually was like, okay, I'm beginning to like play well. This was one of my two like really good plays in the tournament that I had. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember if this is a 2-0 or a 2-1 win. I'm 99% sure it was actually 2-1. But the main thing is game two. I feel like personally I've become a really good game two adapter, and I was able to adapt really well. I brought, uh, I think I led, it was, yeah, I led Amoongus, Urshifu, and he led Tornadus, and this was Urshifu, Single Strike, which is something, another Pokemon that I feel like began to catch on at the end of the meta. Sash Urshifu Dark is just really good. And turn two, I was able to make a really good play. Uh, I managed to spore the Urshifu the previous turn, had one turn of sleep that had to burn through, and I was able to get a good read where I did Terra Water Urshifu, pretty much blew through the Tornadus, so I pretty much got that off the field with Surging Strikes, Terra Surging Strikes. It was Rocky Helmet, Pollen Puffed right back into my uh, yeah, Pollen Puffed right back into it, and got myself basically right back into the game. Yeah, this was yeah. So I was really happy with how that turned out because ultimately Urshifu lived on like 2 HP later, so getting a really useful Pollen Puff back into my Urshifu was great, and then I was able to pretty much take over the game after the Tornadus went down. I think I think I did do have a game plan like where he brought Dozo once, and I hardcore focused it, but that was pretty much it. This set I'm not proud of because I just played bad. Uh, One thing I've noticed is that pens are loud. He was taking notes during set, which I'm chill with. I get it. I'm like at some point I'm want to do that as well, but I don't think I have like the mindset for it right now. Ultimately, it was something that kind of tilted me a bit, but I think I allowed it to tilt me more than it should have because it was just a loud pen. But also, like when you get double KO turn one, game two, that's also not good for your mental, which I think I've come to accept. So, also, just because I'm noticing it, if I ever look over that direction, I'm looking at my second monitor, which I need to stop doing. So it's like, okay, 2 and 4, it's rebounding time. My opponent doesn't show up. So round seven, I did not play this team. I can't tell you what this team was, what it did. I learned what this team is when the results came, when like this came out. So I learned this like at home Sunday night. So ultimately, I didn't end up playing him. I played somebody else. Yeah, let me let me look it up real quick. I play. This is who I played because he was sitting right next to me. His opponent also didn't show up. So we did just a quick best of one, and I managed to take that, which was always nice after the timeouts happened. So really nice. Always ma- massive respect to Mitchell for allowing for pretty much doing that. Because I feel like it's not always something you see. It's like always it's a nice bit of camaraderie, which I'll obviously something I'll talk about later. So then I can get rid of that as well. So round eight, I think my favorite round of the tournament personally from how I played. Uh, Main thing is that my opponent Carlos, he brought Illumise. He's the only person in I think the entirety of San Antonio to have this Pokemon. Blast to play against. It's a really fun Pokemon to play. It's really fun to play against because it's a fun prankster mod. I mean, my favorite Pokemon is Whimsicott. I think prankster mods are fun. Outside of tornadoes, which is just annoying, but I also use it as well. It's annoying for everybody, including the person using it, because your bleak one misses, and then you're sad. Uh, Only Illumise in the tournament. It was a Terra Ghost Illumise to protect against fake outs and all that. It had Tailwind, Fake Tears, actually Infestation as well. He took game one, and then I took game one. He took game two, and then game three is I think the best individual Pokemon I've ever played, which is in the end I had his Iron Hands and Ogerpon against my Golden Gate. It was a case where if I knew if I Terastallized and he Wild Charged, it would still kill him. Like I was banking on that, and I could set up a nasty plot and begin to go to town. because previous turn he made a risky read that I would use Golden Go, and it ended up I ended up not terrestrializing that turn, so he didn't when he did fake out into that slot. So I was able to get a little bit more damage off with Urshifu, which I had to take advantage of. Ogerpon then, of course, Horn Leech got it out of there. So I pretty much had to be careful. I managed to predict the terrestrialization correctly. He told me after the set there's like a 50-50 that he was going to do Drain Punch or Wild Charge. Ultimately make the right read, which I'm really happy about, and I get the what is it? The Iron Hands KO'd, and then both of the Ogre Pawns IV Cudgel's crit. So it was ultimately the correct read. I was able to get the kill the turn afterwards because I got the nasty plot because I was at -1, got the +1, got the nasty, so got the Shadow Ball off, managed to pick up the KO. And finally this round, uh, this was the most, I think that was the best Pokemon I've ever played up to this point, including since then, which is just showdown ladder BS stuff. And finally, this round, game 3, I almost choked a 4-1. I'm pretty sure I almost choked a 4-1 Pokemon lead because I forgot, because I used Bleakwind when his last Pokemon was King Gambit, and piece of advice, don't do that. That's not good. That's not a good idea. Ultimately, I managed to still kill it because it turns out when I forgot how Aqua Jet works against Sucker Punch. I played the set really well. This was my one set win against Lando I. Part of the thing was it was a Terra Water lander, so I had a lot more safety just spamming Rillaboom attacks into it. And specifically, so I specifically got like had to play around that terrestrialization. I specifically had to play around more so it's sludge bombing into my Rillaboom slot, which I don't remember the calculation or if I live or not. I hopefully do, but I managed to still play correctly, which is a really risky terrestrialization. That was another 50-50 because he was debating Earth Power or sludge bomb in that slot, and I managed to predict correctly and get the one hit KO. Ultimately, it was like another a really scary set, but ultimately I managed to pick up the win and I managed to go 5-4, which after starting 0-3, I feel like that's a really good way to finishing off the tournament on a 5-1 run is really good and honestly did a lot for my individual confidence as a player. Because I feel like I can now actually go and do stuff and perform to a level I'd be, at least hopefully perform to a level I'm proud of. And I got the mentality of it doesn't matter who, like, hopefully when I'm facing people soon, it's like, okay, I'm not gonna go in scared. I'm gonna go in like hopefully like brave and confident that I can at least win or take a game. Am I at the level of top play? Obviously not, but it's about part of you got to get there first. So that was ultimately the run. Some fun stats. What's the most common Pokemon I didn't run into? It was I believe it was Chien. I know I'm curious. No, I believe it was Chienpao I never ran into. Yeah, I just I just that's just how it works. Didn't run into Ogerpon. Didn't really run in. I ran into Roaring once. Uh, no Dragonite. I think. No, I'm not even sure. But yeah, pretty much. The most notable part, Landers Incarnate. This was its coming out party. I wasn't ready for it, and it kind of showed at some points. But for the most part, I'm happy with how I played this tournament. So, and I didn't like forget any basic interactions, which was also nice. So, I guess that pretty much leads only. I'm gonna go back to just generals. I'm gonna leave this here, but I'm gonna go back to general stats. Because I'm big into the numbers. I really like just talking about numbers and like all that sort of stuff. So, but I also really want to. I don't want this to take too long. So I'm going to just quickly go over my experiences of the tournament as a whole. I did not go to this tournament alone. I also didn't have to go at 5:30 in the morning, but thankfully my mom, that's where I'm staying right now. She decided she also wanted to come. Like when I first said, "Hey, I'm gonna do San Antonio," her first interaction, the first thing she said was basically without me. So we went together. We had a great time. She knows nothing about Pokemon. even less about competitive Pokemon. When she heard there was the Pokemon Go tournament, she's like, "Are they running around catching San Antonio catching Pokemon?" So I'm really glad to have that experience with her. It's like it's just it was awesome. Great experience with the many people of Colorado VGC as well that I got to see there and also competed. And even the many people that I got to meet that weren't members of Colorado VGC also wanted to shout out the CVL community because they're super cool as well. All right, I'm gonna get down to business. Uh, it was a really nice venue. It's like okay, like San Antonio is a great city. I think it's like one of the most underrated cities in Texas. Don't let Charles Barkley deter you. It's a pretty good spot to hang around and like tour and stuff. For the most part, as an individual competitor at the venue, for the most part, it's always going to be a bit cramped. I think, like obviously, it's like getting around is tough because there's going to be a lot of people. Of course, it's like we were with I mean, TCG is also there. Pokemon Go is also there. All the age divisions are also there. It's like when there's almost 2,000 people competing in TCG, it's going to be a very full room. I feel like it was very well. It was very well like I knew what I was doing, where I was going, and all that. It was which I'm guaranteeing most regionals are like that, but it was very it wasn't hectic. I think that was the nice part. I didn't feel like there was too much chaos going on, which is something I was definitely pretty scared of at first. I'm not the type of person who reviews for this, but yeah. It was just I just had a really good time. Of course, it's like no water, no food, but there was like the room we were in. There was another food place right outside. They also did good because it was like this was not it was not like it was just VGC in San Antonio. There was also like a cheer thing there that day, and then when I was leaving, there was a massive like USA ball galleria thing. I don't know for Christmas. Ultimately, though, it was a really good experience. It was an experience I'm very glad I went out and did. Out as I mentioned, I want to thank the Colorado VGC scene. I want to thank the Collegiate VGC League for pretty much piquing my interest in Pokemon, allowing me to go forward. The one person I want to really thank is Brett Coleman. He was not only the guy who provided my Urshifu for the tournament, he basically just traded me his Urshifu a bunch for all the tournaments I used it, but for also pretty much helping me make my team. We both went to the same college. He actually just graduated from grad school, so I'm taking over the Pokemon Club for him at Colorado School of Mine. So that's a really cool experience. So if you're watching this and you go to Mines, please come to our club. I'm desperate. But I guess to wrap this up, my throat's getting a little sore and all that. Also want to thank my parents because they both pretty much went through with this whole crazy plan, especially my mom for actually coming with me. And like they're both super supportive of this. It's like I'm not gonna say I'm blessed because that's a cliche, but I'm really happy I managed to find a community who's like just I feel like really supportive of each other, especially like VGC in a whole. It's like everybody it feels like everybody's down to build each other up versus tear each other down, which I feel like was the one thing I am scared of when it comes to like joining a competitive scene. So getting that like experience was just awesome. Uh, Other than that, I'm that's pretty much it. I'm gonna wrap it up, and I hope everybody watching this has a great rest of your day. Or if you're watching this at midnight, I hope end up having a great day. So, anyways, that's Running Red. I'm hopefully going to make a lot more videos in the future about stuff. Hopefully do some live streaming because I just think live recording matches sounds like a good thing. And that's it for me. Have a nice day.